Is this something that I have done in my life that needs to be cleared up? Or is this an enemy that's coming at me, but is going to flee different ways? Now, one of the things that I've heard other preachers say is can be really difficult to ask that question when you're in the midst of it, right? So when you're in the midst of enemies coming out at you, it's hard to be like, God, why? That's probably not the question you should be asking. But just Elohim, what is your strategy? What do I do? And sometimes that requires for you to wait for him to answer. Sometimes you do nothing. Sometimes he tells you to move this way or that way. But curses coming against you do not mean that you are out of alignment with Elohim's will. But if you are obedient, they should never overtake you and win. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I obey your word. Psalm 119. Very good, MD. So you left that in the chat. We do go astray, but also know that there can be times that we haven't gone astray and an enemy does come up before us. And that's why it's so key for us to be in that type of relationship where Elohim, where there's trust. Where there's trust. And if you are living right, then you have nothing to fear. That comes from a life being obedient to his laws, and you have nothing to fear. The only time you should fear is if you know that you've done something to not be disobedient, to not be obedient. Yes, Doreen, we do have to trust the truth of his word, but it requires are you living according to Torah? Because that's what he's talking. When he's talking right here about his word, he is not talking about anything from John to Revelation. All of this that we are reading of right now, when Moses is talking and repeating the words from Elohim, he is talking about the commandments that he just gave them and nothing else. And if we keep those, we're good. So let's continue with, and the reason I want us to go through these curses is you need to understand that what you see here. Listen, let's start in verse 20 again. The Lord will send against you curses, confusion, and rebuke in everything you do until you're destroyed and quickly perish, because of the wickedness of your actions in abandoning me. The Lord will make pestilence cling to you until he has exterminated you from the land you are entering to possess. The Lord will afflict you with wasting disease, fever, inflammation, burning heat, drought, blight, and mildew. These will pursue you until you perish. The sky above you will be bronze, and the earth beneath you iron. That means there's no rain, and you can't till anything from the ground. The Lord will turn the rain of your land into falling dust. It will descend on you from the sky until you are destroyed. Listen, the Lord has not said anything in here about Satan, about evil, about a witch doctor, about witchcraft. He is not, they do not have any power. This is why I really believe that they don't have power, because clearly here the Lord is saying that he will send. Now, I'm not saying that they can't affect things, because life and death is in the power of the tongue, and they that love it will eat the fruit thereof. So, yes, there are powers in our words to create. We are made in the image and likeness of Elohim. So we can create situations with our words. If you continue to say that you're not a failure and no one will love you, you can create that situation. It can become what they call a self-fulfilling prophecy. What I'm pointing out to you here is that if Elohim is saying that he will do these things, my God, why won't you keep his word? Why would you want Elohim to do these things to you? Truly, really. Saying that it's evil or something else is really a distraction. If your Heavenly Father said that I will do these things to you, I want to be obedient. Like, I do not want him to send those things against me. Are you following what I'm saying? This destroys our wealth. Do you remember when we were reading, some of you that just came in, we started in Deuteronomy 27. Before we got to chapter 28, we were reading in Deuteronomy 27. And they just did a bunch of these curses, right? And you should go back and read it or listen to this session. And they went through these curses about secretly kill your neighbor, sleep with your mother-in-law, sleep with your sister. You would be cursed. But it also said at the end that if you do not keep any of these words, you would also be cursed. And to me, that just signaled like there's no good sin, bad sin, okay sin with Elohim. Whether you murder someone or you lead a blind person astray or you harm the fatherless or you don't obey his words, all of that subjects you to be cursed. If you tell a lie to Elohim, it's the same thing as if you slept with your mother-in-law, or if you killed your neighbor, or if you led a blind person in the wrong direction. There's no sliding scale of sin for him, of disobedience. How about that? You're either obedient or you're not. And I don't know that we teach our children, and I don't know that we really teach and we understand and grasp that for ourselves. So the things that he's talking about, the things that he instructs us on, to dishonor your mother or your father, that is to be cursed just if you slept with your mother-in-law, if you secretly killed your neighbor, if you had sex with an animal. That is the same curse. There's no exception, well, if your mother deserves it or your father is good to you, even if your father abused you or your mother left you on the side of the street. It says to honor your mother and your father just as much as it is important to keep the commandments. We're not doing these things. There cannot be an exception, an expectation of being blessed. And then what we have to understand is that you don't look at someone's possession of things and determine whether or not they're blessed or they're cursed. Because we are reading now in Deuteronomy 28. And the first beginning part of Deuteronomy 28 says you'll be blessed in the city, blessed in the field. Your offspring will be blessed. Your land, your work, your flock, the newborn of your flock, your basket, your kneading bowl will be blessed. But yet, we go right down to verse 16. It says you'll be cursed in the city and cursed in the country. Your basket and your kneading bowl will be cursed. Your offspring, your land, your herd. So possession of items does not guarantee that you are cursed or that you are blessed. We cannot look at what people possess and make a determination about whether or not they are blessed or cursed in the eyes of Elohim. I hope that this saves a lot of people, a lot of anguish at looking at what other people have, thinking that somehow they are blessed by Elohim. That is not the determination of whether or not you are blessed or you're cursed. Are they keeping the commandments that he has given? And he gives a lot of them in here. He talks about keeping the feasts. He talks about giving to the poor. He talks about keeping Sabbath. He talks about not being covetousness. He talks about the type of food you should eat and not eat. Listen, everything you need to know to live holy, you can find from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And it's really not that difficult. It's all right there. When Elohim keeps saying, if you don't obey my word, you will be cursed. And just to bring it to the New Testament people, that is exactly what Yeshua was saying, because that's what he was reading from. You need to obey the words of the Father. And what words of the Father were they talking about? Oh, let's go back to Deuteronomy and read the words of the Father that Yeshua, that James, that Paul, that Timothy, that they were all talking about. If you are not wealthy now, where have you been as far as keeping in alignment with the things that Elohim has commanded for you to do? I think this is a good place to stop, and we will finish it off next week. Because I don't want to rush through these other 30 verses. It's like still 30 verses. 35 verses that we haven't even gotten to yet. But take the time throughout this week and go back and just read through this. And know that if Elohim is willing to send these things to you, there is nobody else you need to fear but him. It's not your pastor, it's not your neighbor, it's not your auntie, it's not your spouse. It's not some troll on social media. Listen, he is saying that your corpses will be food for all the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth with no one to scare them away. The Lord will affect you with boils of Egypt, tumors, a festering rash, scabies, from which you cannot be cured. Come on now, people. Elohim is saying that he's going to do this, and he said this some 4,000 years ago. Nothing has changed with him. Somehow evil, the government, your neighbor, the system, the white man, whoever, nobody has superseded the authority and power of Elohim. The only person you need to fear is Elohim. If you can stand in obedience to his words, which are very clear, you're going to be okay. And as much as we like to think about our religion and the religious things that we talk about and have been taught, there are things that we have taken on. There are things that we have believed because of religion, because of teachers, because of pastors, that have nothing to do with Elohim and what he commanded for you. As much as this may sound shocking, I feel it. If you don't go to church on Sunday, you're not going to hell. There's nothing in the word of Elohim that says you must be in church on Sunday. And do not forsake the gathering of yourselves together. It's quoted in the New Testament. It is not Torah. And he is not saying it as in that this is a law you must keep or you're a devil. He was encouraging people. Now, I am totally not against going to church on Sunday. I think fellowship is a great thing. I think community is a great, because we don't have it anymore. I don't think the way that they used to have it. Although I do find that my husband teaches me so much about culture. We just talk about communities, and when I've been even watching news and things in different communities, I'm not sure if it was Kenya or South Africa, but no, I think it was Kenya. If they found out that you stole something and the community found out it was you, there have been people that have been stoned and been killed by the community today in the year 2024. All over the world, we don't live in communities like that. In fact, you have to worry if it's your neighbor in some places of the world. But that sense of community and belonging and being together, and Charles was just sharing with me about how in certain communities where he grew up and where he still lives, you can have a borehole. That's how they have water, right? The government doesn't always send water in. And if you had a borehole, you just had to know, even though it was on your property and you dug it up, that people could come from far if they needed water, and they were just going to come and take some water from your borehole, and you were not going to charge them. We would never do that in some places of the world now. No, go find your own water, pay for it, whatever. So that sense of community, I think we don't find it too much anywhere, specifically in a more modernized societies, unless we go to a church or the golf club or the bar, right? People go places to find community, to find fellowship, to find belonging. Now, one might say, you're probably better off going to a church for community than the bar. Some churches, I don't know. Some churches, you might be better off going to the bar. They'll be kinder to you, tell you the truth. And if they're going to take your money, they're going to tell you that they're going to take your money. Oh, no, I was not saying no church service, no cell groups. No, I wasn't saying that. MD. No, I was saying the Bible doesn't tell you that you have to do that. The Torah doesn't say that. But what we need to understand is the way that they lived in communities. Right? Look at the way they talk about Pesach, Passover. Right? When you killed the lamb, if your lamb was too big, you invited your neighbors over to eat. That's community. We do these modern things now because we don't have that type of community anymore. I think we're always searching for that. That's why people join clubs. That's why they have book groups. That's why we have all these different social gatherings that we have. Why? When modern times now, when girls getting married or their guys take them out, they have a bridal party, they have a bachelor party, they go out and celebrate. In other communities, it's done within. The whole community comes together. When you get married, you got to feed the whole community. No, I'm not saying no, don't do those. I'm just saying the Bible doesn't say in Torah that we need to do that. We need to understand they lived in community, right? It talks about when you have a field, right? During certain years, you don't harvest around the edges. You leave that field for the poor. It's part of the Torah. Why? Because they had community. You had to make sure that the poor had something to eat. Now we have passed that off to government and social services. And so us creating a church and having a food drive is us trying to get back to some things that were already placed in Torah to do, because we don't live in communities like that. So yes, have your cell groups, have your churches. I'm just saying, if you don't have that, if you don't do that, don't let any church tell you that you are sinning. That's all I'm saying. Don't let a church condemn you for that. But what I will say is that we need fellowship, and we should have it. One of the things I've found hard in moving a lot is that I've not been able to find a physical body of people to fellowship with. Online is not the same as in person, because online you can't tell if I'm depressed or if I'm crying. You can't tell if I have a bruise on my face because my husband abused. Like, you can't tell certain things unless I'm physically in your presence. You can't hug me and hold my hand. You can pray for me through online. I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is that there is a need for fellowship, and we should make sure that we find a way to find that. And sometimes we may only find that in church. That's all. But don't feel guilty because you don't have one. But you're probably missing out on fellowship. And so find a way to find human fellowship. We were created that way, the way that Elohim set things up, the way that families existed. Even if you just begin to go back and look at the Torah, you look at the 10 Commandments, look at the things that they did in the wilderness. It was all community oriented. The same thing about not shaving down all the corners of your field. You leave some for the poor. There are places in Torah and Leviticus where it says if you know that your neighbor has need, that you should give. That's fellowship. That's community. But we live so differently now. We have so moved away from only in certain places, right? Because there are still communities, and I find that communities that are very still agricultural are still very close to some of the things about Torah. because they sow the land. It's just the way that they live is different, and they really live communally. He was telling me that you could come into a place, and if you went back home to visit your family and your home was too small now, you could stay with a neighbor. Could you imagine us doing that in modern day time? I'm going to come back to the U.S. and I want to stay with my brother, but he doesn't have enough room for me that I can go knock on the door of the neighbor and stay there. Really? So it depends on your culture and the things that happen. But I've noticed very heavy agricultural cultures still tend to stay very close to the things of Torah. And how did we get on this topic about church? I do not know how I got on that topic at all. Sorry about that. I got off on a tangent. Anyways, I don't even know how we got over there. Okay. So anyways, we're going to end here on this part of curses. We'll pick up on curses when we come back next Sabbath. I want you to read them. Go ahead and just read all the way through Deuteronomy 28 and get to Deuteronomy 29. There'll be some important follow-up parts to that, which we will get to next week. Because you should understand the whole context of what is happening. But these curses are things that come from Elohim. And so you read through these and then you start looking at different countries and what they're going through, nations and what they're going through, communities and what they're going through. Have they brought on a curse because their leadership has not been keeping close to the words that Elohim has said? And if that is the case, then we know that there's no political party, there's no political coup, there's no social program or nonprofit organization that can really turn the community around unless they decide, leadership decides, to come back to Torah. Because these things have come because they have violated the laws of Elohim. And I believe that all of us in this room listening, and those who won't listen later, we believe that Elohim is sovereign. He hasn't abdicated his throne in any way. He hasn't said, once the year 2022 hits, you guys don't have to obey my laws anymore. I don't believe that's the case. So if he's the one that brings these things, then turning to him is the only way that can restore them. And switching political parties, voting for somebody. Of course, you want to vote for someone who is going to lead you back or allow your leaders to come back to that place, because some countries are very restrictive. Right? I told you guys I lived in Vietnam. It is a communist country still. So Christians are persecuted. Nigeria is not a communist country, but the Muslim section up there in the north, they are killing Christians. And you would think, why are Christians just leaving anywhere near there? Because that's where they were born, they're raised, it's their land. Yet, a lot of Christians are murdered in Nigeria. So, what's going on? Who are the people of that land and what are they doing? Who do they serve? So how are we going to change those things? How do we change food insecurity in some countries? As bad and as horrible as I feel about them, I look and it's like, yeah, look at what your leadership does. Look at what your country does. Look at how you celebrate witchcraft and voodoo and things like that. Even the people that call themselves Christians still see the witch doctor, traditional, and then still go to church. Come on now. Like, you are now crossing over those lines where you are breaking parts of Deuteronomy, breaking parts of Elohim's Torah. So the only way to turn a community, a country, is for them to get back towards Torah. All right, everyone. Thank you. Anyone have some thoughts? Anything that you want to share or say before we close the room? All right. Yeah, so I think next week will be the last section on our wealth series. which I think is okay because we will be heading up upon coming on Yom Kippur, Yom Teruah, Sukkot, upon a feast, right? And we'll talk about a few things about those things and bring us in to getting ready to celebrate that time. All right, everyone have a blessed day. Shabbat shalom to you. This room will end in...
Oh, quickly, I had to come back. I was in the bathroom. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to say something before it closed. You veered off, but you didn't really veer off. You said, if you don't go to church, you won't go to hell. Don't let your pastor lie to you. That's all right. So I wanted to make you aware that's how you came to the subject of fellowships, church, and all that. But now, here's what I want to take you back to. And I believe I have heard this severally. And every time it's said, there's not enough education on it. Somebody who hears this may stop going to church tomorrow. That is where I have a challenge with it. Because every time I hear it, there's no education on it. There's an assumption that we all know, we all understand. But I don't believe this message is just going to end with us and it's going to end here. And you know me, I'm bringing it because I know this may be a challenge to a babe who just hears it. And tomorrow they have nothing to do with church again. And tomorrow they'll tell you not forsaking the gathering of us together means absolutely, it doesn't apply to us. Actually, it means it's talking about the feast and all that. Someone who has no idea, and all because whenever we utter these statements, we don't educate. So I will love you if you have time, really, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, in 2 minutes time, really clarify that for anyone who will come and hear this, even 10 years later. Because otherwise, for somebody who will take it at face value without any context to it, will think, church to the bin. We don't need to do this thing. Fellowship for what? Cell groups for what? Fellowship for what, really? You say it when you say the New Testament is how we live out the Torah. Because when the apostles were there, there was no New Testament. When all these other acts took place, the New Testament was not there. So if the New Testament is how we live the Torah, we've got examples before us. We've got those who have walked before us. What does it have to say about? Even missionary work is best. Missionary work is best. Going to church is best. Every other thing is best for a man who does not understand. If I'm putting quotation marks on that, for a man who's a babe or a woman, someone who's just coming to Christ, who has no clue what this is all about, who has no background of, I can stay at home and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If the New Testament is how we live out the Torah, if those who were before us demonstrated how they lived the Torah, what is expected of a man today. So I bring this because of that. And the thing is, I keep hearing it. So I had to rush out of the bathroom because I thought it will be an error for me to sit here as a teacher and not ask you to go further than that. For a man who may not have the background that you have, some of these things can be going over our heads and everybody could be agreeing, but they're not agreeing or they don't even understand what they're agreeing to. I hope you hear my heart, really. I speak as one who shepherds. How do we live out the Torah? There are those who have lived. If the New Testament is how they lived the Torah, what are these examples for? Oh, what is expected of us today? with this salvation that is supposed to be personal. Woman of God.
Thank you, MD. So, yes, let's dig into this a little bit more. And again, I hope that anyone who's gotten to this point listening, I hope you heard all the things that I said before. But in case, let me just make this a little more well-rounded. We go to church because we desire, because there's fellowship there, right? I know that you've been told that you go to church because that's where you learn about God. The unfortunate thing is that you're supposed to learn about God at home with your parents, with your family, right? Again, I am not saying to not have fellowship. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if you don't go to a church building, that doesn't mean that you're going to hell or that you are sinning. So let me clarify how I'm getting to all of this. We have been finding, in my other life, I do some other, I don't like to call it social justice. We don't call it social justice work, but we deal with communities, in particular the Black community, from a very conservative standpoint, right? And one of the things that we had a discussion about is how recently, to us, it seems new, but it's not if you really study history, how people have been falling away from the church, especially Black people, because they're like, this is a white Jesus, this is a white man's faith. Some of you have heard some kind of version of that, right? Don't even get into some of these other Black groups who tell you that Christianity is a white man's religion. I don't want anyone to ever feel that is true, because I don't think that it is, but the construct of what has happened with gathering together has changed. Anyone who is benefiting from and being refreshed and renewed when they go to fellowship, you never have to worry about them not being at church when the doors are open, because they're being fed there, they're being renewed, they're enjoying the fellowship, they're enjoying that time together, right? So they're always going to go, no matter what anybody else says. I think who I'm talking to are even sometimes conversations that I've had with myself, because like I said, I've traveled a lot and I've been in countries where I don't always speak the language. So how do I fellowship? Where do I go? And I can tell you with all my heart, I am sure that Elohim brought me to those places. So you are a Black American sitting in Vietnam and you don't speak the language. Where are you going to go to fellowship? Am I now in sin? Have I lost my way? No. Because then that's what made me really push and study, because I'm like, am I breaking some commandment of yours, Elohim, because I'm not in a service? What do you require of me as your child? We keep the commandments. What does Elohim say? What do you do? Those are the things that you do. These other things that we're doing now are other things that we've done. And some of that is tradition. And we started this conversation even talking about man's tradition and religion and what it can do to you that can bring you away from. And Vase had brought it up too about what happens when leaders teach you things that lead you away from Torah. And I say at some point we have accountability and responsibility because we have the Bible in our hands. If you don't read it, now, if you can't read or you have limited understanding, that is one thing altogether. For those that do, you can pick it up and read it. You will not be able to say when you stand before Elohim. My pastor told me this. I'm sorry, God, I didn't go back and read your word to see if he was telling me the truth. I just trusted him. You don't do that. You are responsible for the way that you live your life. And I've been saying out all throughout our conversation here, we don't have time to be looking around and being judged or judging other people by whether they're cursed or they're blessed by what they have, what they possess, what station they have in life. And so I think that's how that brought me into this conversation about, or this point I was making about, if you don't go to church, you're not cursed. Why did I say that? Because I want you to go back and read the Torah. I want you to go back and study. I want you to, and when you read, you will see in the Torah how they lived, the things that they had to do to be responsible to their community, to their neighbors. There's lots of laws about neighbors and the poor and the widow. You can't, those laws don't happen if you live an island unto yourself, which you should not do. There's nothing in the Torah that tells you or teaches you to be isolated. It very much teaches community. What I think and what I'm saying is that I don't want people, I'm praying that people don't go to church or go to a fellowship where they're only going because they feel like it's their responsibility with God. That if they don't go, somehow they're going to be in trouble. Because if you feel that way, then going is not going to do you any justice. It's not going to gain you any brownie points. Now, I believe that you should have fellowship, though. However you do that, because in Torah, to give tzedakah, charity, to help the poor and the widows, to know if your neighbor is sick, you can't always know those things being isolated. When we were just talking about in Deuteronomy, when I said you'll be blessed going in and coming out, a few of you were not here when we were reading that and discussing, you're blessed going in, you're blessed coming out. What does that mean? That means you're going to go out into the community. You're going to go out into those spaces. You can also be cursed going in and coming out. But the point is you need to move among the people. It says you'll be blessed in the country, in the city, and in the field, in the country, in the city, however your version has it. Your location does not identify whether or not you will be blessed. Just because you're in the country doesn't mean you can't be blessed. And just because you're in the city doesn't guarantee that you will be blessed. These are things that come from Elohim. And so when I say that not going to church doesn't mean you're cursed or doesn't mean that you're disobedient to God, because you will not find any of those things in this commandments. I say this to shake people up because we're trying to get people to pay attention to Torah. And if you go back and you start paying attention to Torah, you're going to find things that, like, I didn't know I was supposed to be doing this. Yeah, you are. So you better get on it. And whether your church or your religion does it or doesn't do it, you are still held responsible. And I want you to be responsible. So making that statement about church is not to say, oh, never go to church again. You go to church, and I hope you go because you enjoy the fellowship. You enjoy being there. Your relationship with God, man, you better be keeping the Torah. You better be reading his word. You better be meditating on it day and night. You better be seeking it for guidance. That's the importance of Torah. There's nobody in this earth that you should fear more than Elohim, because he is the one that will afflict you with boils of Egypt, tumors and festering rash and scabies which you cannot be cured. The Lord will afflict you with madness, blindness, and mental confusion. Yeah, just Deuteronomy 28:27. If you are disobedient to him, these are the curses that happen. And so what I'm saying is, as you look around your community and you see some of these curses going on, don't blame the witch doctor. Say to ourselves, hey, are we in alignment with Torah? Because if we're not keeping Torah, then we're going to have a problem. Our community is going to have a problem. And the only way to get back, and this is what I was saying, the only way to heal your community, your family, your nation is for your leaders to get back in alignment with Torah. So don't be thinking that you can keep Torah and then you're sitting in a community or a fellowship with people who don't keep it. Now, if you want to go there just because you enjoy being around the people, you like the music, it's okay, go if that's what you need. But what I'm saying to you is that does not determine whether or not you are blessed or cursed. You are blessed or you are cursed depending on whether or not you keep Torah. And it is possible that even if you are doing the right things, that your leadership is not. And therefore, the community around you is dying. And it's possible that you, like Daniel, could be taken into captivity, like some of the prophets who were taken into captivity with the rest of the people. Why? Because their leadership had turned away from the Torah. So can you get caught up and be trapped in those things? Of course you can. But you can make your way out. You can make yourself known to Elohim. And you can still be blessed no matter where you are. And remember that blessed of him has nothing to do with your possessions. That's what we're reading here in Deuteronomy 28. So when I say to you, I don't know about any other teacher, preacher, or anybody else, but out of my mouth, when Regina Roundtree Wakesa is talking about church won't save you, that's what I mean. It is Torah only that saves you, but we enjoy fellowship. And we need fellowship. And you should find fellowship. You should find fellowship with people who are going to help you keep the Torah. Right? Find fellowship with those. And it can't just be online. I know some people would like to be like, oh, we just only need to, because you don't have to go to a church. You just only need to be fed. That's not true. Because look at the way some of the laws are from Torah. You have to be in person. You have to see those people. You have to deal with them. You have to be in contact with them. Those things are important. Right? And just know that and find fellowship with people who, and again, I'm not even saying my family's not saved. They ain't thinking about Jesus. So I'm not going over their house. That's not what we're saying either. Because they're family. You go and you see them. You don't have to do the things that they do, but you can go see them. Because how else are they going to see Elohim in you if they don't see you? So go see them. Love on them. Be a light to them. Be the salt of the earth. They can't be a light. They can't be a salt. They can't see you. They can't taste you. They can't touch you. Go and do those things. Just be wary of the places that you go to have fellowship that greatly influence you more than you influence them. And I'm talking about fellowship, not work. You're going to have to go to work in some places. Go to work. We're talking about fellowship. When you go for fellowship, you are looking to feed others and be fed as well. Your soul, your spirit, you're wanting to connect. So those things are important. And so as we have this great community, a lot of things happening in the U.S. where people are falling away from church, especially the Black church, where we're hearing more that it's a white man's religion. And I'm trying to say church, and they talk about church hurt. No, people hurt you. It doesn't matter where they are. You don't call it church hurt. Say that person hurt me. And if you and that person were sitting in school, you don't call it school hurt. And if that person betrayed you when you were at work, you don't call it work hurt. Right? And if you're married and your spouse hurt you, you don't call it spousal hurt. Let's stop categorizing the church in this way that allows people to say God is good or not good based on an entity when that's not how he set up the Torah. So, MD, thank you for that. I hope that brought clarity to people and we will think about it. But fellowship face to face is important. Don't not do that. If you're desiring not to do that, then you have hurts and wounds that you need Elohim to heal, because if somebody touches you, you're still sore there. And that's what we do, right? They're like, oh, I don't need a fellowship. I can go blah, blah, blah. Then you've got wounds and things that need to be healed because you're fearful if someone hits you in the wrong way. I might lay down my religion, or I might be blah, 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 blah. Your mouth is running. Why? I don't need them. Nah, that's really more about you. You don't want to be touched or hurt, not because they're going to hurt you, but because you're really tender. That wound hasn't healed in you. Those stitches are still there. The knife is still in your back, right? And so if that's your sense about fellowship, then go to Elohim and get healed. And then find some fellowship, right? And the only way you know if you're healed is if you can get around people and it doesn't hurt anymore. But if you stay isolated, you will never know, right? So don't stay isolated. And so don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together. Don't abandon that. It's not about church. I think it's means so many other things. Let's go to this verse that MD gave us, and then we're going to close. So Acts 4. And what is it? Acts 4:23 she brought up. Let's go to Acts 4:23. And they were released. They went to their own people and reported everything the chief priests and the elders had said to them. When they heard this, they raised their voices together to God. What she's pointing out here is that there are times that people went together, got information, and then went back and shared it with their small groups, their communities, whoever. So there are many ways of gathering together, right? And what that means. Okay. I hope that helps. Anyone have questions or something that came to you from what I said that you want to share?
It was very clear for me, even though I came a little bit later. And it's right with what you said. And of course, others will think differently because of the hurts they've had. And finding the right fellowship as well, which I've now found, which is really good. And with like-minded individuals. So everything you said was very clear. Both times you've repeated it, but even you gave some extra golden nuggets, which I appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doreen. MD, we good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And we'll be back next week to, I think, finalize our wealth series on part 8. And we will continue with the rest of Deuteronomy 28 and get into Deuteronomy 29. Everyone have a wonderful Sabbath.
Thank you for listening to Selah Sabbath Studies, where ancient truths meet modern life. We pray what you've heard today invites you into deeper reflection and a deeper walk with the Creator. If you'd like to join us for live Sabbath sessions, find the room on Clubhouse. And if you're listening after the fact, feel free to leave your thoughts or questions in the comments. We do read and consider them and will respond. Until next time, pause, reflect, rise. This is Selah.